goes to school here, or faculty and staff, exist out in the real world where public records are. And so you can find out tons of stuff about Newman and the people who are here by making record requests with public agencies and stuff like that. So kind of one of my first primers here that I like to share with students is when you are going to file a records request of any sort or go looking for something, especially if you're asking for it from a public agency, is to know what you want. Public agencies aren't real keen on fishing expeditions. They want you to go in and actually ask for what you want, know what you're asking for. Some of the things, if you don't ask for anything specific, they can tell you that a record doesn't exist or they don't have records responsive to your request. One of the other things they can say is that your request is too broad and is overly burdensome to the agency, so they won't fill it for you, and you don't want that. The other thing to know is if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, you might only get part of what exists because you don't know that there's more there. So doing a little bit of homework in advance, I think, is always a really good way to start. There's tons of ways to figure out what is available. You can ask agencies, read policy and procedures manuals, look at retention schedules to see what sort of records that agencies are required to keep under the law. Watch public meetings, ask agencies how they keep the records, who keep the records, what kind of records they handle. And then every public agency has a records custodian. That's their point person that you can go to and make records requests and ask these sorts of questions of. So those are important things to know. Open records, here are some really important things. Our open records law covers public agencies like public schools, governments, and law enforcement agencies because those are taxpayer funded entities. It's not gonna cover Newman, but like I said, because it's a private institution, but like I said, Newman exists out in the real world, so you're going to be able to find lots of information in records that are presumed to be open. Businesses and nonprofits are also other examples of entities that exist out in the real world that aren't subject to open records laws, but you can find tons of information about them if you know other places to look. Court records are one example. I'm a huge believer in court records being like a gold mine for finding out things about businesses, agencies, schools, and people. One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that businesses, for example, when they're interacting with public agencies, like doing work for them or whatever, there are contracts. If, say for example, there's a lawsuit in court, and there's a settlement agreement made to resolve a lawsuit with a school, a public school, or a government agency, you can get the settlement agreement. It might not be a part of the court record, but you can ask for that from the public entity, and that's an open record. Operating agreements and stuff like that, too, are also things that you can ask for. Just a couple of examples of stories that we've done. This one was a business that does, they provide tablets and other services to jails and prisons. They don't have to provide us with information when we ask, but we asked for the contract or the operating agreement with the Sedgwick County Jail here, because that's a public entity that has to provide us with records, and so we were able to do a story about inmates getting tablets, which raised a little bit of uproar. Nursing homes are another thing. You go to a nursing home and you say, hey, give me your list of complaints. They're not going to turn that over to you, but those that accept Medicare and Medicaid payments have to make certain reports to the federal government, and all of that stuff is wrapped up on a website that you can go research, like what's bad and what's good in nursing homes. So those are just a couple of examples. Here's where to find our Kansas Open Records Act. It's very easy to find online. You can actually just Google it. Specifics on that. And then, this is old, we have a different Attorney General now, but there's some explainers on the Open Records Law that's easy to find online. Real quickly here, before you file a formal Open Records request, just call up the agency or your school or whatever, even if it is Newman, and ask them for stuff. A lot of times you'd be surprised how willing agencies are to just hand over stuff without getting their legal folks involved.
Not Newman.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I've got some tips for you guys here in a little bit about how to find certain things. You won't have to put in the time or expense involved with filing a formal request. Agencies can ask for you to pay certain amounts of money, and all of that's kind of laid out in state statute, but they can charge you so much to provide you with the record. I always like to ask for records for free because I'm cheap. I was a single mom for a long time, and I also believe that normal people shouldn't have to pay hundreds or thousands of dollars to access a public record. So I like to ask for things for free. But yeah, so some of the things, just tips. Some agencies let you submit requests verbally, others want them in writing, or they have forms online that you can fill out. I like written requests because I like the paper trail that I can follow or reference later. Again, be really specific about what you want. I'm sorry, that was my phone. Be really specific about what you want in your record. Include the actual names of the records or documents you're requesting. Any pertinent information that helps an agency narrow down what you're looking for. Again, that helps you avoid making requests that an agency might think is overly broad or overly burdensome to fill, and therefore they can reject it. And again, ask them to provide records for free. If they won't provide something for free, ask for an itemized statement of cost prior to them filling it. So I just recently did a request, for example, this is an excellent example of why you should ask for an itemized statements of cost. I asked for, from the county, a list of unclaimed bodies. You know, these are people who might have been homeless, or maybe their families were too poor to pay for burial expenses, and so it falls to the county to dispose of the body. We used to do burials here in the county. Now we do cremations. Taxpayers pay for all of this stuff. I have a story planned where I'm going to be looking at that, because the number of indigent cremations and burials has skyrocketed over the last 10 years. But I asked for a copy of, or a list of everyone who's been cremated over like the last 10 years. The county's initial quote for what I asked for was over $8,000 just for a list. And so I ended up going back and having them change some things and paring down my request, and then I ended up only having to pay like $54 for it. So.
And they claim that this money is because the man hours it takes to pull up the request,
yes.
And copying fees.
Yeah, so some of it, agencies can have like a certain amount of money they charge. They have like lawyers who are handling your request, or they have just regular clerks or some other staff handling your request. They have like a per hour fee for that, or a copy charge. So in my indigent bodies or unclaimed bodies request, some of the records, some of the information that I had asked for were in records contained in the salt mine. So records that have been shipped over to the salt mine for storage, and so there's, in Hutchinson, certain government records are stored underground in the salt mines. So they have a retrieval fee, and so, you know, if there's like 300 different records that I'm asking for, there's a retrieval fee for every single one, and so that was part of the $8,000 cost. It's ridiculous. But anyway, so just some tips there. You don't have to read this, but this is just sort of my formal core that I send when I have to make a formal request. But I like to use this language. It's you know.
I might need to get a copy of that.
Yeah, so if you want to copy that, just shoot me a note.
Yeah.
I share it with everybody in the newsroom.
Because we're going to try to make some open records requests here later this semester.
Yeah, the only thing I ever change on here is this middle section that says what exactly I want. Everything else is just kind of like my form letter. And obviously, like, I do quite a bit of homework in advance of making these requests, so I can provide as much detailed information about exactly what I want, which I think is really important. And this is so for your story that you're gonna have to do for your midterm. There are a lot of records that are already online because somebody already requested them. The city of Wichita, for example, has their log of Kansas Open Records Act requests posted online, which means if there is a document that's associated with that that's been released already, you can access it.
So your TV station see what you've requested by looking at that?
Yes.
Oh,
Well,
dear.
yes, so some of the things, however, that I request, and I think other reporters request, don't show up because they are not made visible yet, until after they fill the request. And I think some sensitive things that are requested, they also do not make visible. For example, we had a fatality traffic crash in northeast Wichita a couple of years ago where a woman, she was mentally disabled, she was a resident over in Hart Spring, left the facility and got hit by a box truck. So there was a piece of this that involved a Wichita police detective, probably doing some stuff he wasn't supposed to, drinking and driving. And so I requested everything associated with that case that the police department requested. You know, and responsive to that request, I got things like traffic crash photos and body cam footage, and some of that is graphic to look at. So the city of Wichita, I don't think they ever released that stuff to the public because they don't want to put that out in the public sphere. You know, nobody wants to see pieces of flesh hanging off of a vehicle. But that was some of the stuff that we get when we do open records requests. So not everything is necessarily made public. However, you can, all of the requests that are made to a public agency under the open records law, their log of requests is also an open record. So you can request that from an agency and see exactly what everybody else is asking for.
So if you peruse, is that searchable, that thing?
It is, yeah.
If you peruse through that, do you sometimes find stories just by seeing what other people have requested?
Yeah, you can do that, and
So
it's
you can
not
search
just,
Newman or something, or?
yeah, you could,
Yeah.
and it's not just reporters who use this thing, just
Yeah.
average members of the public use it too. But for example, like if I wanna see if, public salaries, like if a list of, what everybody who's an employee of the city of Wichita makes in a year, you know, somebody might have already requested that, I would go and search that log and see if that document has already been released before I go to the city and ask for that. So here are just a couple of tips. If an agency refuses your request, you can resubmit requests after some time has passed, get really creative about how you ask for things. Agencies don't have to create records for you, that's really important, but what you want may be contained within another record. An example of this that we just did recently is the county might not necessarily have to create a list of all of the employees in the emergency communications department. These are like the 911 dispatchers. But if I ask for all of the public, a list of their database of salaries for all employees in the county, those employees are going to be contained in that data, and then I can just pop it all up into an Excel spreadsheet, filter for the 911 employees, and there I have a list. Check for other sources, read your policy and procedures manuals. It's another great way to find out information that an agency might decline to give you. Google it, or ask someone else. Sometimes one agency will, and this is especially true for like police records and stuff, sometimes one agency will tell you, no, we're not gonna give you that record. You just go to another agency and ask for the same thing, and they might give it to you. Here's some of the things that are gonna be especially applicable to you. Not everyone has to follow open records laws because they aren't subject to them. Our sunshine laws, that's for government stuff because they're taxpayer funded entities. Businesses, private, parochial schools, colleges and universities, nonprofits, and tax exempt organizations, if you submit an open records request to them, they don't have to fill it because they're not a government agency. There's a number of ways to research these things when they aren't. Now, sometimes you're not gonna get as much information out of them as you would a government agency, but it's still worth, looking into. For businesses, there's like Security Exchange Commission filings. Those are for publicly traded companies, which also have earnings reports. They have annual reports or newsletters, press releases. You can dig around on their websites. They have policy procedure manuals too. Bankruptcies and foreclosures are part of court records. If a business goes into bankruptcy or they're where they are located, that building is foreclosed upon. I mean, all that stuff's in court records, which are presumed to be open. The Secretary of State's business entity search, you can get all that. You can find out who owns a business. You can also ask spokespeople, troll social media, look through court records. Same kind of thing for private and parochial schools. Check out your websites, look for annual reports or newsletters to see what's going on. If there are meetings that you can attend, see what those are and pop in. Check out policy and procedure manuals so you understand how things work, and sometimes those manuals can talk about different records that are kept or what have you, stats, or stuff buried in there. The U.S. Department of Education is an excellent source to find out basic things. Newman, for example, you guys don't have to report. I don't know if you have your own police department here on campus, but you guys don't have to report your crime stats every year to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, like say WSU does. But the U.S. Department of Education has a great data portal, and part of the stuff that they collect is crime stats, even on your institution.
There you go, Gabe.
Say that again?
Gabe's covering crime this semester.
Yeah, so the only thing to know about this really is it is not up to date.
Okay.
So like you can't find 2023 stats on there because they're not there yet. But it's a good jumping off point. If you're looking for like how does, maybe you have develop a good relationship with your security person here and they can talk about crime on campus. And then you can go back and look at the stats that are already there for prior years and compare how things have changed. And I've got a slide here that kind of shows you that, or how that might work. You can explore your school website for readily available records, troll social media for the people who are involved here, the officials, you know, students, what have you. ProPublica here within the last couple of years has launched this exceptionally good nonprofit Explorer database. And Newman is a nonprofit, so it is in there. This database includes IRS records. Tax-exempt organizations and nonprofits, including Newman, have to file with the IRS something called a 990 form. And so there's certain bits of information that you can pull out of there too. Ask spokespeople or board members questions. I mean, that's a great way to get information. Court records, again, is another thing. Same thing here with nonprofits and other tax-exempt organizations. So here's ProPublica's Nonprofit Explorer. This is just a screenshot. Newman's on there. This is just kind of like their landing page after you do on Newman, after you do a search. I mean, you can see revenue, expenses, you know, stuff like that. When you drill down into some of the forms, this is an example of the latest 990 form that's been filed. This is for tax year 2021. There's a little bit of a lag because, you know, these nonprofits don't have to file these things right away. Like, you're gonna file your 2023 taxes here pretty soon. You know, they're gonna file their 2022 990. But anyway, you know, it's still good to check these things out. And these can be pretty lengthy forms. But you're gonna find things on here that might be useful, like revenue and expenses, you know, what they spend in a year, what they bring in a year. There's, if you wanna know what the president of your school makes, compensation wise, that's listed in here.
Is that Newman's right there?
Yeah, this is Newman's stuff.
What does it say our president makes?
So reportable compensation was 243,000 and some change. Other compensation from Newman and other organizations, 14,000.
That's not a bad little salary.
Yeah, so I pulled all this stuff last night to put this together. So this is applicable to your school. And there's a whole list. I mean, this is only like a partial list of the folks on here. It's not every like professor or adjunct professor or anything like that. But there's directors, VPs, trustees, stuff like that. There's also sections in here for explanations. There's different parts of the 990 form, and then there's a schedule at the end where other things are explained. So there can be interesting tidbits in there that you might find useful in reporting, or even, you know, if you're just trying to find out about your school. So those are things to look at. ProPublica has some training online about how to use these things and how to read 990s and stuff like that. I just went through that training at the end of the year, but there's definitely resources out there to help you out. The U.S. Department of Education here at ed.gov, if you Google that, they have, this is their landing page, they have a data tab. If you go into that, this is what you're gonna see. And I know this is a little small, but there's a number of things that you can look at. There's a college scorecard, and then their open data platform. You can kind of noodle around in there and kind of see what's available. I just did a college scorecard for Newman yesterday. Like if you want to know what your graduation rate is here, the average cost to attend, you know, once you graduate, what your graduates are making on average.
Okay, what does it say?
Sorry, it's my little, graduation rate is 60%.
What? That's not good, is it?
Average annual cost $18,000.
Oh my God.
Median earnings $51K. So
That's depressing.
yeah, and so these are some of the things that you can pull once you drill down into the scorecard here at Newman. And there are a number of things you can click on here if you want to sort it by the largest size, highest earning, lowest debt. Like I just picked highest earning, but your field of study here, what your median earnings are, and this is sorted, you know, highest to lowest based on what the field of study is.
Please don't tell us what it is for comm.
I don't know, I'd have to get in and look.
Don't
You guys
look,
can
don't
do that.
look. I don't wanna know.
Make that a question on the final.
We don't wanna know.
But anyway, there's stuff like how diverse is your campus?
Not
You know,
very?
yeah, so this is race and ethnicity, which I guess I was a little surprised at, but diversity, like you only have 34% of students, I think this is undergrad, who are low income and have Pell Grants. And you can compare this stuff to other colleges too.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, your student to faculty ratio, you know, they have a racial and ethnicity breakdown for both student and staff. You know, 94% of your full-time staff here is white. You know, 3% is black, 3% is Asian, you know, 1% is Hispanic. You know, which you can take these numbers and see how that compares to the racial and ethnic breakdown of the city as a whole. I can tell you the city as a whole, I think the racial ethnic, or the racial breakdown, for example, for black individuals is about 11%. And usually if there's no like racial disparity, you would expect to see about the same percentage of people within a specific race in an organization or at a school as what you would in the larger population in the city that you're in. So definitely heavy on the white professors, and also the student body. I mean, I don't know if there's a story in that, maybe not, but you can see how that compares to, you can use these things to see how your school compares to other schools. So back to the campus security, I did a page on that. There's a separate portal for getting data on crime and things like that. They list your, like if you don't know who your director of security is, like that stuff's listed here. Your Title IX coordinator, for example, is also listed here. Total enrollment for 2021, you know, and their contact information. And you know, if I were trying to do a story on security here, I would probably look this stuff up and then make sure that we still have the same security officer.
We don't.
Morris Floyd. Okay.
We just got a new one, and we have no Title IX. It's always in flux here.
Oh, really?
We're trying to find a new Title IX, and we just got a new security guy.
Well, those might be stories to do.
Yeah.
What happened to the security guy, and why have we not had Title IX yet? So these are also these are Newman stats. I pulled these last night off of this website. As you can see, like the most recent year they have is 2021, but overall criminal offenses, you know, in 2021 you had a fondling offense here.
What?
Yeah, I mean it's right here.
On
Fondling.
campus?
I believe that was an on-campus thing. There's a breakdown of underneath here. This is only a partial screenshot of the table, but there's a breakdown of where these things happen.
Holy.
I believe this is on campus.
Fondling.
Burglary, you know, in 2019 you had 2 instances that were reported, 3 in 2020, 1 in 2021. They've got domestic and dating violence stats here. And there's a number of things. Look, I mean, I only clicked on one tab, but if you wanted to look at hate crimes, arrests, disciplinary actions, you know, other stuff, like these are things that you can explore. Dating violence, you know, in 2019, you had a domestic violence incident here on campus. There was a stalking incident, you know, disciplinary actions. Apparently, liquor law violations are a thing here on campus.
What?
2019, there were 16. 2020, there was 15. 2021, there was 8. These are all on campus, on student housing facilities, right? Like, this is stuff you can find out. And again, this might not be something that's especially recent because now it's 2024, but you can use these stats to compare to how like you're doing compared to prior years. So they're still useful. Oh, here's another fun thing I went ahead and looked up last night. As part of the Department of Education, they have an Office of Civil Rights that investigates complaints. This is old, obviously, it's from 2019, but you know, Newman University shows up on here as being investigated for a denial of benefits discrimination claim. You might be able to get additional information about what that was, you know, from the Department of Education. So just because Newman won't provide that information to you, doesn't mean you can't go to the U.S. Department of Ed, which is a government agency, and try to get a copy of the complaint, you know, or the results of the investigation or what have you. This is just an example of a story we just did a few months ago, May South Intermediate, that was middle school, I believe, is under investigation currently for allegations of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. You know, and that's part of the stuff that came out of the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights, Office for Civil Rights. Here's just a fun thing I thought of at the last minute last night. Because Newman exists out in the real world, they're subject to oversight. Restaurant inspections, I do a story every single week. Denise is of course the fantastic dining reporter that I take care of throwing together a story
Because
about.
I don't want to piss off my sources, I
Yeah,
let me do it.
I know. But you know, this is the Department of Agriculture has a portal that you can go to and see which restaurants and other businesses that serve food to the public or sell food to the public, including grocery stores and campus dining halls and stuff like that. You can go on there and look up, you know, how often they've been inspected, like what violations they've had, whether they've been failed their inspection and stuff like that. And you can drill down and actually look at the reports and do stories. I do one of these stories every single week.
How are we doing?
So this is Newman. The last time you guys were inspected was December 5th, 2023. You had 2 violations, but it wasn't enough to throw you guys out of compliance. I did not look at the actual report, but you could go on here and look at the actual report.
I wouldn't though, it'll make you never want to eat McCafe again.
I don't think it was like cockroaches or anything, but
Amy finds the worst ones every week and we have a horrible headline like, restaurant inspections, cockroaches, slimy pink molds on soda machine.
yeah, I don't eat out very often. It makes you not want to eat out very often.
What's that?
No, I have the dining center. I could go.
They have slimy pink molds?
I don't know.
They probably do.
Well, my story every week tells you how to report violations
Yeah.
too. Like if you're unhappy with how things are at a place you're eating, like the stories tell you.
But there's not a
how to-
category for gross, disgusting, flavorless food.
I know, right? So, anyway, but again, just another example of Newman's not gonna tell you if they failed an inspection, but you can go to a different source and find that out. So, even private institutions, businesses, they exist in the real world, so you can find stuff about them through public records. I'm a huge fan of court records for so many reasons, and I've got so many slides about court records. But if you guys are researching people, this might be helpful to you in some capacity. So lots of different courts exist. We have federal courts, we have appellate courts, we have state courts, we have municipal courts. Federal courts, for example, are where you can find a lot of civil lawsuits and criminal case filings dealing with stuff that might cross state lines. You know, if a drug trafficker is coming from California into Kansas, they may get charged with some drug crimes on the federal level because they're crossing state lines to do that. But anyway, you can find federal search warrants and returns. Bankruptcy filings are always federal. So if somebody files for a business or an entity or a person files for bankruptcy, pacer.gov is where you can go to look up those cases and actually review the documents. There is a charge for viewing documents. It's 10 cents per page. But the government does not charge you if you don't use, like, I think it's like $15 or something like that in a quarter. So if you're only looking up like one thing, you know, they're not gonna end up
Is that
charging
where we
you.
could look up the current status of our lawsuit?
Yes,
Okay.
because most of those lawsuits from Newman that were filed, I think there were like 5 a couple of years ago. Some of them are in federal court, a few of them are in state court. Sometimes lawsuits start in state court and they get transferred to federal court, so, you know, you can check in both places. Anyway, state courts, these would be like Sedgwick County District Court, so many things there. Felony criminal cases, you know, if there's a homicide and somebody gets charged with murder, you're gonna find that in Sedgwick County District Court. Lawsuits, if, for example, say an employee decides they wanna sue Newman because they feel like they've been discriminated against, a lot of times it will start in state court. Autopsy reports, evictions, subpoenas, some traffic violation cases, marriage license, divorce cases, petitions for name changes, protective orders, search warrants, I mean, like, all that stuff is there.
Can you search by name there?
Yeah, so the state of Kansas, there's a number of ways to search this stuff, and it's gotten a little bit more accessible to the public here in the last year. The state courts, the district and county courts, they have public access computers at the courthouse, which you can go to. There's actually more records you can access on those than you can online. This kscourts.org, there is now a pretty robust search function there for state court records. And especially in newer cases that have been filed, the documents you can also view online. So if somebody gets charged with murder, maybe last week, I can go look up the court records and actually see like the complaint on that.
Can we see in there yet whether our person got divorced, or is that something we have to go to the courthouse for?
So that's something that now you have to go to the courthouse for, because divorce records are not uploaded into this portal. The state has decided that like some things that would be considered more private, like adoption records aren't gonna be on there, juvenile court records aren't gonna be on there, divorce and some family law cases aren't gonna be on there because they're considered more private matters, but you can go to the courthouse and look that stuff up.
But if you're backgrounding someone, is it worthwhile to toss their name in this?
Yep.
database?
We do it, yeah, we do it every time we write about political candidates, for example. We do a full court background on them to see what we can find. You can do Google searches, dockets are oftentimes posted online, call or email your records clerks to find and obtain this stuff. This is probably gonna be less applicable to you, but at the same site, you can find appellate court and Supreme Court records. This is what I just talked about, is the centralized database that the state has just rolled out. Municipal court is great. You can find out somebody's traffic history, city ordinance violations, like if somebody doesn't mow their lawn a lot and they end up getting like fined for it, like that's gonna be there.
Where do you find those?
Oh, it's those are city ordinance violations.
But like, can you look those up online?
Yeah, so the city of Wichita here within the last couple of years, I love it. They, it's wichita.gov, I think is their website. There's a tab in there for municipal court. They actually have a case search now. So you can pop somebody's name in there, and it will show you cases. And then you can take those case numbers, call up the court and say, send me all of the documents in the public case file via email, and they'll send them to you, and then you can actually like view the ticket. Like any of you have gotten written a ticket by a Wichita City cop, that is a record that I can request. Because it's subject to open records laws. I can get a copy of the actual ticket. So anyway, other things you'll find in municipal court, DUIs, misdemeanor crimes, domestic violence is an example, generally of a misdemeanor crime. Unfortunately, our municipal court doesn't have a public access computer that you can go sit at and search these things up, but they have made a database available online, which, like I said, is fantastic. And so you can just look that up, pop in your name, your brother's name, your mom's name, your teacher's name, and see like what they've got going on.
And then you just message, and then when you want the record, you just.
Just ask for it. Yeah.
Just contact the municipal court.
Yeah, contact the municipal court and ask for it. One of the things that I will caution on any court records is making sure that the John Smith that you're looking up is the John Smith that is your teacher. Sometimes people with more common names, there are many of them in an area, so it's useful to get birth dates and things like that too, which you can also find in court records. Just a couple of examples of stories that we've done based on court records. This was a municipal court thing. Newman University, again, there was a designer drug called N-Bomb. We had a death a couple of years ago, the first one, I think, in the city.
Oh my God, is this the baseball party?
This is the baseball party.
Oh, the famous baseball
I
party.
did this story, I found this, well, the baseball party was a thing, and the woman died and nobody knew why. I got her autopsy report, and then we did the story about what killed her, and I interviewed her mom and her dad, and did a whole designer drug.
Did they ever say if she got the drug at the party?
She got the drug at the party, I do not know who, I don't think we ever established who she got it from.
The baseball team was so tight-lipped, like not a single player would say a word about
Hell
that
yeah, because
party.
they didn't want to get charged.
Oh my God.
So, anyway, just a couple of other stories that we've done. I won a couple of awards for this pair of stories. Where we use court records and publicly available records. Things you can find in court records: phone numbers, full names of people, their birthdays, other identifying information, including social security numbers.
What?
Which I don't tell anybody, but I sometimes piece together social security numbers to pull other things like rap sheets on people. So
Hackers don't know this.
I don't know that they put together, they have that much energy.
Okay.
But, I mean, I pieced together a social security number off of a teacher one time that I was trying to find her, look up her teaching license. And so I was able to take her social security number that I pieced together, pop it in the public search portal that our state has for looking up teacher licenses, and you pull up her like relatives of somebody you're looking for. Like if you know a kid's name, if you want to know their parents' name, that might be somewhere in court records, addresses, criminal history, prior complaints that have been lodged against somebody. Sometimes there are records you might not be able to obtain elsewhere. Attorneys in civil lawsuits like to attach stuff as exhibits to their lawsuits, and that's stuff that you might not be able to obtain during just a regular public records search. Again, just why are some reasons I would want to do this: background in your teachers, administrators, finding people to talk to, find out how often your university is suing students to collect unpaid debt or tuition, find out who is suing your university and why, whatever. So a couple of stories I've done. I used to read name change petitions. I noticed a lot of people were mentioning that they were having to change their names to get a real ID. So you did a great story. This was mostly intended at the time to, it seemed to be affecting older Kansans, so we did a great story about how people had lived for years with that one name, found out that that wasn't actually their legal name, and they weren't able to get a real ID without changing their name legally. So just a couple of other. Newman was sued by 5 former employees over the course of a couple of years. A few years ago, this stuff was mostly in state court and district court. We were able to write those stories, and I helped out some of Denise's students finding some of this stuff.
We never could find out how they were resolved, so we'll have to check that out.
Yeah, so these are stories you guys could do, finding out how this resolved might be something that you guys could do for a class story or whatever. Arrest affidavits in criminal cases are presumed to be open. You just have to request them, request their release from the court, and if a teacher here at Newman gets arrested and charged with a crime, you're gonna wanna request the probable cause affidavit so you can find out why. Because Newman's not gonna tell you that, and the cops aren't going to really.
Is that through the court?
Say that again?
Is that through the kscourts.org?
Yeah, although you have to make a request, with Sedgwick County District Court if it happens here.
Okay.
And if any of you guys ever run into a situation like that, just contact me, I'll help you, coach you through how to do that. Anyway, this is just more stuff on how to get court records. Oh, one other pro tip, and this is a little in the weeds probably for you guys, but once something is presented as evidence in open court, so at a trial or at a hearing, it's a public record that you can obtain. That includes all kinds of things like reports, photos, body camera footage, crime scene photos, although none of you guys really wanna see that stuff. But that becomes part of the public record that you can request and obtain. Transcripts of hearings are public records. So you can get, you have to pay to have those produced, but you can get copies of those. There are a couple of things that aren't open. Adoptions, child in need of care stuff, juvenile case records, criminal cases for kids that are younger than 13 are not open, but you can still ask, attorneys and stuff for information. So court in general is presumed to be open here in Kansas, so if any of you guys wanted to go sit up in a murder trial this week, you can do that. You don't have to get permission because court's presumed to be open. There are things, and this is probably not especially applicable to you, but you can ask a judge to grant you special access. Just a couple of this. We had a reporter who asked for special access to child in need of care and did a whole series on that. These are kids that are going through abuse situations and been pulled out of their homes. And then I got special access. This was another child in need of care thing to follow for a while a case of a 5-year-old boy whose grandma just abandoned him at a Kohl's store after a shoplifting attempt. Skip that. I'm gonna skip some of this other stuff because I want you guys to have some time to ask questions. But with law enforcement, police blotters, arrest records, stuff like that, those are open. Again, everybody who goes to school or works here, they exist out in the community, and they're committing crimes, doing whatever. So these might be some sorts of stories that you do if there's a student who's involved in something or a teacher. Lots of records already exist in the public realm. Just Google them. Here's some different examples. County, jail, inmate logs, restaurant, lodging inspections. There are portals everywhere and data everywhere online, teaching licenses, budgets, databases, what have you. So anyway, I'm gonna kind of stop here. I think if you guys have database related questions, you can definitely contact me.
If these students are, which they are, going to be trying to write a very extensive background report on a single person, what I've written down that they should maybe check kscourts.org. They should check Wichita municipal courts. Where are some other places that you would send them to find just any kind of data on an individual, like a background?
Yeah, definitely do like a deep Google search, which means going like beyond the first page of search results to see what's online about someone. Troll their social media pages. There are tons of free database type websites that can give you information about a person, where they've lived, who their relatives are, stuff like that. Court records just are such a great way, like a jumping off point, especially for stuff that people don't want you to know. But yeah, those would probably be my things that I would start out when we do those sorts of stories. I always background somebody through court records. I do a deep Google search, and then troll their social media pages.
Is there a way to find out if someone has ever been arrested?
That's usually contained in rap sheets. The KBI, I think it only applies maybe, I can't remember if the KBI's rap sheets apply just to the state of Kansas or if they're in the nation as a whole. But those are things that you can obtain because they're public records. No, the KBI rap sheets cost I think like $20 a piece for a person. But if you're doing like a criminal investigation, it might be useful to pay the $20 to do that. We use LexisNexis. I think I don't know if you guys have access to that here through your university, if they have a subscription that you can use, but LexisNexis is a database that's got like lots of information compiled, so you can type in a person's name and, you know, they'll give you information about, like, who they are, where they've lived, property they've owned. There's some courts that provide information, so there might be criminal cases listed there for them too. So LexisNexis is another,
Do you guys know if you have subscription to that as a student?
like through the library or something.
We'll find out.
Yeah, so that's something that we subscribe to at the Eagle and we use all of the time to find out.
You have to have a
information
subscription
about
to use it.
Say
You
that
have
again?
to have a subscription to use it, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
believe so.
Yeah.
I know we do, but there's a public records.
Yeah.
Search function on there, but, just real quickly, some of the stories that you guys can do, public salaries, traffic tickets or public record, you can do stories about that. Maybe you wanted to do like, what's the crime around Newman Lake, or what are are there traffic problem areas around Newman Lake? That's stuff that you can get through public records. Autopsy reports, again, are public records. If you have a student who dies, and you wanna find out if there's been an autopsy report done, you can obtain that. You can find out if it's a drug death, homicide, a natural death, whatever. Lawsuits, again, public records. Arrests and criminal charges, public records. Lots of stuff there that you can access that's useful for story. Michael Stabolo, one of our crime reporters, and I just last year did a story about weapons in Wichita Public Schools. It's public record, you know, how many weapons were found at each school.
Amy, have you found, are people usually, the people who work in these agencies, are they usually resistant to your request? Are people pissy with you? Do you have to frequently remind people about open records? I mean, how does that work?
So it depends. It's always kind of agency specific, and how much you push on them and how they've worked with you. You, under our Kansas Open Records law, do not have to explain to an agency why you want a record. Like, that is not required. You request a record, they're supposed to give it to you. If they ask you why you want it, you do not have to tell them. That is not required.
Do people ask you often?
Sometimes it kind of depends. And I have, and this has been especially true with the police department, because we have sometimes a contentious relationship with the police department. Sometimes they'll want it to be like, well, hey, why do you want this? And I'll be like, you know, I don't have to tell you that. You know, thanks for asking, but I don't have to tell you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is useful to tell them why you want a record, because they can help you determine whether or not you've got the right record, or whether the information you're asking for is contained somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, they can get difficult. We've filed lawsuits over records that have not been released. Here's an example. I think it was in 2017, there was a Iraqi American family that was arrested at a bank when they tried to deposit like a $178,000 check that was the proceeds from a sale of a house when they had moved from another state. The bank thought that was sketchy, that they had brought it in and that the check was potentially fraudulent. So they call law enforcement. Family ends up getting handcuffed, and what we would think of as arrested, the police department says these people were never arrested, although they were definitely detained. So there was a whole flap about that, that got written about. I asked for the body cam footage from the police department because I wanted to see in every way the police interacted with this family. And so I argued with the police department for a while to get it. They agreed to release it to me, but wanted to charge me over $400, which I thought was ridiculous. Because again, I'm single mom cheap. I feel like records should be accessible to the general public, not just to people who have the cash to pay for it. So as soon as I asked the agency to justify the cost, send me, you know, a breakdown of, you know, the wages that are being paid to the people who are compiling this request, they decided that they were gonna decline my request, just blanket refusal of my request. And so we ended up suing the city to get the body cam footage released. That lawsuit took a couple of years to go through the court, but bottom line is you know, we have the ability to have a lawyer on retention to fight these sorts of cases. We ended up with the body cam footage, but it took a couple of years.
And a lot of money, probably.
And a lot of money. But that was the principle, it was a principle of the thing, like the city.
So any public agency can say, no, we're not giving you those, and then you have to sue them or whatever.
So you can push back. There are a lot of times where the agency will refuse to give us a record and we'll have our lawyer contact them. But if you request a record that you are pretty sure is supposed to be open and you get refused, push back and make them explain why they're not releasing it to you. And then if they're still not releasing it to you, there are other resources that you guys can go to. Like we have a Kansas Press Association. Like they have people around to help out with these sorts of things, you know, for journalists, and especially at like smaller organizations. And they probably have resources to help student journalists fight public records battles too. So these are some things to think about. But anyway, how money is being spent is another thing that you can do stories on. And then just kind of my last thing that I'll leave you with before we get to a couple of questions here is most working journalists are happy to help students and each other. I do this all the time. Just contact us and ask for help and guidance, and we're generally always willing to do that. There's how to contact me. If any of you want to friend me on Facebook or whatever, just look me up. I'm on Amy Renee Leiker. You're welcome to message, call me, email me, whatever. Send smoke signals out to the ether. I answer all forms of contact.
Do you guys have questions for Amy about this?
Sorry I didn't leave very many minutes for questions, but you could literally hold like multiple classes on open records. There's just so much stuff out there and how to background people. So questions, anyone? Yep, go ahead.
How useful are white pages? Like on the white pages, like online to website online, you can look up people's names and stuff, and information comes up.
Yeah, so if you're trying to find like a phone number for someone, or like who might live at a address, or where they might have lived in the past, something like that might be useful. Like whitepages.com is what you're talking about. Yeah, so when I do Google searches on people just trying to figure out kind of on the front end, you know, what is out there, I will click on like white pages and some of those other sites like that and just kind of see what's there. Cell phone numbers and phone numbers and stuff like that, contact information isn't always accurate on those sites, but it can be a good place to start. We've had success just like if you can't, there's no like cell phone direct, like phone book of cell phone numbers out there, right? And so sometimes we've had success finding current cell phone numbers by doing Google searches like that. And they show up on like whitepages.com. So it's a great resource to start with. But as with anything on the internet, like verify. Like you see something on the internet, that should be your jumping off point, not necessarily what you're reporting in a story. Like you have to take that information and make sure that it's accurate before you put it in a story. So definitely useful. Google searches are great for finding out what's already out there about people. So what else? Any other questions?
Do you find that people in the public sometimes are like judgy about why we want these records? Like sometimes people are kind of judgy about privacy and things like that. When I assign students to background a professor, they get all creeped out like, that's not a polite thing to do.
Yeah, so I think I get kind of a lot of crankiness from people because I have like a bankruptcy database that I update every day, booking database that I update every day, and public salaries, and people are like, well, it's nobody's business that I filed for bankruptcy, or it's nobody's business that so-and-so got booked into the Sedgwick County Jail for theft, on suspicion of theft, or it's nobody's business, you know, what a cop at the City of Wichita Police Department makes every single year. But my response is, so yeah, I get a lot of crankiness over that kind of stuff from people, but I don't know these people don't know me, so, you know, it might upset me for like a minute, but then I'm just like, in the grand scheme of things, people are using these records. They're publicly available records. You know, they're easily accessible, you know, generally, especially if we're just compiling them. And like, this just like taxpayer funded stuff.
Our money is paying for it, so we have a right to know.
Right. And so in terms of like your teachers here at the university, like they're instructing you in the classroom. You know, I don't know what they might find creepy that you might be asking them. But you know, if you're trying to find out like what their family situation is like, you know, if they're married, if they have kids, like some people will say that those sorts of questions are intrusive, or like, what did you do for a prior career, you know, stuff like that. But just ask, you know. I would say if they push back, you can explain to them why you think it's useful to know.
Yeah, I'm gonna have them find out stuff by just records. I don't really want the professors to know our background in them, but sometimes students think it's creepy. Like, people have that initial reaction like, well, that's private information, you shouldn't be digging around in there, but.
Yeah, well, most people don't realize how much information is already about them, on them, is already out on the internet.
People are shocked to find out.
My parents, for example, like my mom doesn't even have a profile picture on her Facebook page because she doesn't want photos of her posted on Facebook. But I'm like, Mom, like, you can find out so much information about you and Dad, like, on the internet with just a search. Like, so what if you post a photo on
Older
Facebook?
people get very upset about that.
Right, and younger people do too. Like, there's so little actual privacy anymore because so much information is easily accessible with the internet, and readily accessible. For those of you who are backgrounding people here, I would say try to get a copy of their resume or their curriculum vitae, like, and you can check like whatever they put on their resume, you can check to make sure that it's like accurate, like it's real, like they didn't lie on their resume. Check out their LinkedIn pages, stuff like that.
And journalists, just so my students know, journalists don't go poking around this stuff just for gossip. I mean, when we do it, it's because there's a legit reason that the public would need to know or be interested to know what's happening.
Right, like I might, for as an example, I usually when I'm trying to figure out how a database works, I will Google myself or like my mom and dad or something. But like, I'm not gonna go take your name for example or your name for example and go like dig up the dirt on you just so I can gossip about you. Like, I've got better things to do with my time. And the average person doesn't take the time to dig through all this stuff either because it can be time consuming. You know, they're just gonna see what you post on social media and like complain about it, you know, or whatever. So yeah, we're not doing any of this stuff just to gossip or even to make you look bad, you know, necessarily if we're gonna write a story about you. And there's all kinds of conversations that happen within our newsroom about whether or not something we dig up is actually worthy of reporting in a story.
Right. Or fair.
Yeah, fair or worthy. Is it relevant? You know, because we know now in today's day and age, stories we post, that information is going to live online into perpetuity. Like, you know, and do we want somebody to be able to Google you 20 years from now and find some like little DUI arrest that didn't make like sense, like it does no impact on your life like 20 years later? We want somebody to be able to dig that up. So we have these conversations all the time in the newsroom. You'll have these conversations with your, with Denise and whomever else, if you guys are pursuing journalism as careers and stuff like that. So definitely useful to talk to your editors about what should and shouldn't be in a story after you find all of these.
Well, Amy, we're very much appreciative of you doing this. You guys hang around for a minute so I can tell you what to do, but I think someday we're going to have to come back to intro and tell us just all your grisly court stories.
Oh God.
Amy has sat through a million grisly court cases, and that's why I'm a features reporter. I don't want that stuff in my brain.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. It's really hard. I think that people don't spend a lot of time on the crime and courts because it can get so like emotionally draining, and you are seeing a lot of like the worst of society. There's something wrong, I think, with those of us who do it for a long time. You definitely have to learn to compartmentalize like the stuff and kind of like steel yourself for what you're gonna see. But yeah, I see a lot of stuff that I can tell you I no longer find horror movies and things like The Walking Dead, which my daughter adores. It's like her favorite TV show ever. But I don't find that stuff entertaining because like I see so much gruesome stuff like in court and crime scene photos and videos and stuff like that. So anyway.
I feel like your predecessor, Ron, didn't he kind of needed counseling after was it the Carr Brothers?
Carr Brothers, I go to therapy. I
You did?
have no
Yeah.
problem saying that. Try to take care of my mental health.
Yeah.
And I've gone to therapy off and on for like 13 years.
You probably talk about the criminals in Wichita.
Yeah, and I do talk about the stuff that I see and try to make sure that I have an outlet for that. So I think that's really important. And I do take mental health
Features
days.
reporter. We don't see that stuff.
Well, I used to want to be a features reporter. I will say that when I first started, when I was in your shoes, as students, I thought my life was going to be features reporting, and then I worked my first crime and breaking news shift as an intern at the Eagle, and the adrenaline rush just picked up on me, and I've never looked back. So.
Okay, one question before you leave from me
Sure.
personally. Where do you look up who owns a business?
Kansas Secretary of State, they have a
Really?
business entity search. You know, when we do the database every year of political
Yeah.
contributions, we did for the mayoral race this year.
Yeah.
I spent hours on the Kansas Secretary of State business entity search, looking up who owns each one of these LLCs.
Man, that would
contributed
really
to
help me,
campaigns.
because I look up on the Sedgwick County tax, like, who owns a restaurant, so I can contact them, or who owns a building, and then it's this dumb LLC, and I'm like, what the?
So one of the
I can
things-
usually Google and find it, but.
Yeah, so one of the things is some LLCs are owned by LLCs, which are owned by LLCs,
Yeah.
and so tracking all that can be super
I
cumbersome.
can usually find the addresses and like reverse search the address and figure out who owns it.
One of the things that might be useful for you is to go to the restaurant inspections.
Oh, okay.
If you look in the inspection report itself, there's always a person in charge listed. And
Okay.
oftentimes they are the owner of a restaurant.
Oh, wow.
And if the restaurant is owned by an LLC, that's listed at the top of the
Okay.
inspection. I'll send you an example.
In recent years, I've learned to use the Metropolitan Planning Commission stuff to find out, and the Sedgwick County tax to figure out who owns stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I use those.
No,
all
yeah,
the
that's
time.
useful. Yeah, I'm glad you are.
Thank you, ma'am. Amy, oh, I mean, come on, right?
Thank you.
Isn't that fascinating? Thank you for doing that. I really
Sure.
appreciate it.
And again, you guys can reach out if you have questions, as you get into your, reporting, and you have questions about how to find something, feel free to contact me.
I ask Amy all the time. I always feel guilty, but I do
You
it.
shouldn't, that's what I'm here for.
Okay, great. Fabulous. Please do my work for me, Amy. Okay, thanks, Amy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, you guys, I want you to write up a reaction paper about this discussion. Just talk about, what did Amy tell us? What, maybe something you learned about public records and what's available, and some of the places that you are considering checking when you do our midterm. So just like, a page, it doesn't have to be long, okay? And try to include, or please include one direct quote in that. And give that to me by Thursday. And then we'll do our quiz on Thursday, and we'll talk about the next step in reporting your stories. Oh, and your beat reports are due today, so be sure to email those to me. Remember that? Beat
Yeah.
report, every Tuesday the beat reports are due.
What's the email?
Yeah. Email those to me, okay?
Can you just submit it on Canvas?
Oh, you can submit things on Canvas?
Yeah.
Oh,
you
wow,
made-
okay.
You made like a portal, I figured.
Okay, whole new world, yeah, that's fine. I'll look from there. I'm just learning how to use Canvas. I always resisted it until Lexi got to college and I realized why it was important, and now I'm doing it. So, any questions, you guys? All right, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Again, yeah, that's what we, looked at the majority of, who owns what business for the campaign contributions. I will say that, like, Twin Peaks here in town, for example, is not listed as Twin Peaks. It's listed under the LLC, like 3D Lodge or whatever. That's where stuff like the restaurant inspections were chicken LLC. So, court records can be useful for that too, just finding out who owns what. Okay, I'm gonna take off.
All right, bye.
See you guys.
So all the documents that Ian sent and Chris sent, I cannot open.
Really?
I've tried sending them to like other people and see if they can open it.
What documents they send you?
It's like weird names. I don't
I mean,
even.
what were you asking them about?
They, wait, what?
What, for this for your story?
Yeah, they just sent me a bunch of stuff for like February. And like
Remind me what you're asking them about.
res life
Okay.
and all that. Well, he just had like 2 documents and said stuff about just everything for res life in February.
Oh, wow.
And then I tried to open them, couldn't open them. I then asked a friend to try and open them. If I sent it to them, they couldn't do it. And then I asked him if he can like resend them again. He didn't respond, but I can't open them.
Okay.
So I
Will
don't
you
know what to do.
forward them to me,
Okay.
but then, when that happens to me, I write the person back and say, I can't, my computer doesn't operate to open this document. Can you cut and paste it into an email or something?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I'll just keep trying.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll keep trying.
But send it to me, cause I'm curious what they're
Okay.
putting in.
I'll try it. I don't even, it says that they're not even subject to put it in email. Like when I like save them,
That's bizarre.
I don't know.
Forward them to me, I'll
I've
make
been
mine
trying
open.
because I wanted to see if I can get anything else
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the
yeah.
report, but
Yeah,
I couldn't like open it. So.
yeah. Send,
I didn't know
let
what
me
to
see
do.
it, and let me spec them. Okay, thank you.
Is the recording button?
Oh, gosh, okay.
His name is Bill Murphy.
Bill Murphy is bowling coach?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
alright.
then I emailed like head baseball, both like the assistant, the